Hello, Garland Nixon here. And well, the Trump administration is in a one mell of a hess, as they say, and we're going to talk about it. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. And I was very traveling and busy today, so I didn't really get a chance to do a show, but I got a lot going on. I am getting ready to travel, and I'm just busy doing a lot of stuff. So thanks a lot, everybody, for coming on the chat and hanging out with me for a little while. And let's get going. So what am I talking about today? Here's something that's interesting that you have to think about. The conflict, the oh crap, my camera's kind of looking kind of weird here, and I'm like, am I leaning this way or that way? I don't know. Anyway, if you look at the conflict now, I would say, in my opinion, that the U.S. empire has lost, that the war's lost. I would say that if you look at the 12-day conflict, what we call the 12-day war in June, the U.S. which was Iran and Israel, and clearly Iran won in about 12 days. Actually, they won a lot quicker because if you see, two people involved in an adversarial event, sporting event, etc., right? Oftentimes, very early in that event, you can see who's the advantage. You can see who's going to win. I'm sure we've seen football games or various sporting events, whatever you're into, and let people talk a lot of trash and things like that. But what happens is the people that are watching very early look at it, and you're like, that guy's going to win. You can see early that guy's faster than, he's stronger, he's bigger, he's all this kind of stuff, and you're like, that person's going to lose. I mean, they had a good game, but they're going to lose. And you can see very early, let's say it's a boxing match or some other kind of physical event, who's landing all the blows, who's on the defensive, you know what I mean? And you're like, man, that guy's punching the daylights out of this guy. He's going to, unless something dramatically changes, he's going to lose. He's getting beat up. His eyes are black and blue, and he can't get a punch in to save his life. He is being dominated, right? So we could say that the quote conclusion of the 12-day war was at the end of 12 days. But long before that, you could see probably about the third day that there was going to be a victor, and it was not going to be Israel. As soon as it became obvious that Israel's defensive capabilities were inadequate to deal with Iran's offensive capabilities, it became obvious at that point that Israel couldn't win. And of course, you saw that Israel was much smaller, Iran was much bigger. So you have two things. You have Iran with a much more potent offensive capability, and you have them, since they're so much larger than Israel, ability to take much more punishment. So you have two entities that are in a clash. One of them's bigger, one of them can take a lot more punches, and one of them can deliver a lot more punches. So at that point, you look at it and you say, we know how this ends. And so it was supposedly a 12-day war, but long before the 12-day war, all outside, even casual observers knew, okay, Israel's lost this war. Days in, 3-4 days in, like they started off, and it was like, okay, the Iranians took a punch the first day, and the Israel, bottom line, Israel effectively, they turned their head and they hit them when they were looking the other direction. Hey, look over here. Where? Wham! And I hit them in the back of the head. Okay. When you look at that, they kind of cheated to get a jump. And then Iran stumbled. They got on their feet. And once they started firing back, it became obvious that this was a dramatic mismatch. Okay. Well, here's my point. It was every bit the dramatic mismatch when they fought the U.S. Now, don't get me wrong. Once again, the U.S. can deliver a lot of punishment to Iran. They can deliver a lot of punches, right? But here's the problem. While they can, deliver a lot of punches. Iran can take a lot of punches because they have no choice. You put a person in a position where this is existential, where they're like, well, you're trying to kill me. So they have to fight to the end. You know, as an example, if you know the human, if you understand the human body, there are particularly hormones that we release that are more powerful than heroin. So that if a person feels that there's an existential threat, basically the painkillers that your body releases make it so you don't feel pain. There's been plenty of people that have been shot that didn't know they were shot until they felt blood, because when their body realized that they were shot, their brain instinctively knew this is an existential threat. And at that point, you have to keep fighting. So your body just does away with the nerves. It just says, I'm not going to acknowledge the nerves sending these signals that there's pain there, because that would stop my capability to fight. When it's existential, your body does the things that it needs to do to allow you to keep fighting, because the only other option is death, and your body wants to prevent death. But that's what Iran is. Iran knows you lose this, you're dead. So they can't feel pain technically. They have to fight to the end. Technically, as a country, they can't feel pain in the same way that you can't feel pain if somebody's trying to kill you. That pain will not stop you. If somebody's trying to kill you, it won't stop you from fighting, right? So that's where we basically are. The U.S. has put Iran in a position where they're fighting to the death, and the U.S. isn't really fighting to the death because it has internal contradictions. Right, the internal contradiction of empire is now coming to the forefront as the empire is in deep and serious trouble. The empire is now trying to flex its muscles. The empire is now acting in desperate ways. Well, we can't go fight China. This is part of this. A big part of this is we can't go fight China. We can't go toe to toe with China. So what we have to do is take over all the Middle East oil. And in taking over all the Middle East oil, then we can choke China out of oil. That's a way to take on China, since we can't take them on militarily. And we know we can't take them on militarily. We'll go take the Middle East and we'll choke them from there. So that's a big part of this. People who think it's only about Israel don't understand what the U.S. empire is doing. So here's my point. However, the U.S. empire has an inherent contradiction. And the inherent contradiction, it was most demonstrated by the weapons of mass destruction argument against Iraq, right? By the all of the lies, whether it's about Assad, oh, we've got to go after Assad's trying to kill his own people. Oh, Putin's a dictator and he wants to take over Ukraine for no reason, right? What is that? That is this. The empire can't be clear with the constituents, with its political constituents. It can't be honest with them. We are an empire. The US government can't say, look, we need to go to war. Why? We need to go take over Iran. And the American people say, why? Well, here's the truth. Number one, we want to help Israel take over the whole area. And through Israel taking over the whole area, we'll also take over the whole area. And when we take over the whole area, we'll control all of the oil. And then we can squeeze off any country. We can now say to India, we can now say to China, we can say to any country in the world, you can't get oil unless we say it. And now we can dominate the world because we dominate the oil. Now that is immoral and that's inherently evil. And the American people may question that. So they can't tell them the truth. So they have to lie. They have to come up with lie after lie. Oh, the protesters, the nuclear weapons, the whatever, the evil, we need to bring democracy. They need to come up with lots of lies to the people, because they can't say it's because we're an empire and we're doing empire things. Because the American people will say, but we don't want that. We want money. They've already spoken and said that's not what we want. So the leaders of the U.S. empire can't say we want to dominate the world. And this is why we're doing that. And oh, by the way, American people, you ain't getting nothing out of it anyway. You're cannon fodder. They can't do that. That inherent contradiction of an empire that has to pretend it's not an empire. It has to pretend that it's a country going around the world to do good. It can't tell American people the truth. It has to brainwash them into believing a pack of lies about all the things that it's doing. It is immoral. It is evil. I mean, these are the Epstein class. This is the Epstein people. They're not good people. They're not doing anything for good reason, and they're never telling you the truth. So the contradiction that the U.S. has, Iran doesn't have. Iran can say to its people, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. And that is what they're doing, and that is why they're doing it. Meanwhile, the American government saying to its constituents, it's already lied, and it's got to keep lying. And you know the old saying, a liar better have a good memory. because you got to keep changing the lies every time this one falls apart. Hey, who shot that school full of girls with Tomahawk missiles? Iran. You mean Iran has Tomahawk missiles? When did that happen? Shut up. Hey, you, Pete Hegseth, your boss just said Iran did it. Did they do it? Oh, we're looking into it. Really? But your boss just said they did it. Why? Because everything's a pack of lies. And it has to be, because they can't tell the truth. Now, what does that mean? That means they can't tell the truth to anybody, even though the countries around the world know why the US is doing it. The US can't admit to anyone. There's an internal conversation in the people who run the empire that says this is why we're doing it. But the rest of the people have to lie. And it's an obvious lie. It's a lie that everybody knows the truth. Everybody's like, you're lying. No, I'm not. But it doesn't matter because I'm doing it anyway. And now what do we have? We have 12 days in that this war was lost in the first 2 or 3 days. It was lost. Why? Because part of being the US empire is this narrative that you're by far, right? Why does Trump and his people always say we are the most powerful military in the world? Why we're the most powerful military ever? Nobody's ever been a military like us. Nobody can ever do what we do. This is what we have, the greatest military. Remember, Obama is the greatest military that ever existed. Why? Because that is the imperial narrative. In order to be the empire, you have to be more powerful than everyone else, and you have to keep believing it. It's like the abusive husband that says to his beautiful wife, who could far do better than him on any day of the week, and he says to her, "You'll never get anybody. Nobody would ever want you but me. You should be lucky to have me." Why does he say that to his wife? She could do better than him. He's a clown. But why does he say that? Because he doesn't want her to know that. He wants to convince her, because deep in his heart, he knows she can do better than him and she'll leave him. He must keep it in her mind, I'm the best you can do, and you can never do better. And that way, maybe she'll never leave me. He's just trying to brainwash her. Meanwhile, as Trump and his team, or Obama, or whoever says we're the most powerful military in the world, they have to say that because the American people have to believe, yes, we're going to go start another war and we're doing it. We're so powerful. We have to be cocky about it and arrogant and hubristic. Everybody has to be on board with that. Meanwhile, other countries around the world, when we say do this, they have to do it because they're afraid, because, oh my God, we're so powerful. How do they know? Because we say it all the time. So everybody has to be afraid. So the only way we maintain hegemony is if we have power. But power is only power until you use it. And then it becomes force. And force will tell the tale. Force will give you the truth. Power, talking sounds all good and fine. Hey, you better do this. But what happens when the bully says, you better do this, and the kid on says, who's going to make me? I am. Oh, yeah? Let me see you do it. You punk, you chump, you little big jerk. Yeah, hey, you think you're so tough? Yeah, come on. Let me see you make me. I'm not giving you my school lunch money. Give me your school money. Give me your lunch money. Not going to do it. Yes, you are. Oh, yeah? Who's going to make me? Bring it. Let's do this. That's what happens. And they're using he has power over that kid. Every time that kid gives him his lunch money, he's power over him. And the kid says, power doesn't work anymore. You're going to have to use force. And then it becomes difficult. And then you ain't an empire anymore as soon as your force doesn't work. See, the only thing the US has is an imperial narrative. And when they went and they kidnapped the president of Venezuela, President Maduro. Look, Venezuela was very weak and unable to stop them militarily, very weak. We have basically impoverished Venezuela for the last 20 years. They're extremely impoverished because we have impoverished them for so long. They didn't really have money to defend them, to buy the defensive things that they needed to defend themselves. Right now, if we were to go in on war, try to on the ground and try to do a ground war, sure, because they got a lot of people in their armed with small arms. But as far as major arms stuff, the U.S. doesn't, money and stuff like that. The U.S. kind of pushed them, and really the U.S. didn't attack. It didn't militarily dominate them. They went in and they did a kidnapping. Okay. So they bragged off of that. Look what we did. We beat up a little guy in a wheelchair. Aha, we're the toughest ever. Okay, it sounds good, but you still only have the imperial narrative. Now, there's Iran. And the U.S. says, you better do what we say. Look what we did to Venezuela. And Iran says, nah, we're not going to do that. We'll attack you. And Iran says, if you do, it's all out war. We'll strike you. Don't you love this? We're going to strike Iran. I always say strike. That's like me saying I'm going to walk into this bar full of a motorcycle madmen and killers and motorcycle gang guys who just got out of jail and felons, and say I'm going to strike one of these guys. And what if I think he ain't going to hit back? Oh, I'll strike him. Wham! And he's like 10 of them are going to surround me and beat me to death with chains and knives and clubs because you struck him. So in a nutshell, the US used power as long as it could. And Iran said, power ain't going to work. You're going to have to use force. The same with Russia, but they got away with a little bit with Russia because there's a proxy war. So they can throw some plausible deniability there. And when as they're losing the war, they can say, we're not losing the war. Ukraine's losing the war. So there's some little bit of implausible deniability there, but they're losing that anyway. It's done. It's finished. And they're going to blame it on Europe. We're not doing this anymore. In fact, Ukraine lost. No, it was Europe lost. Everybody lost but us. There's some level of distance, right? They put some distance between them and Ukraine. Not much. Not much. Not enough to really matter, but enough. And they can drag it out because Russia fights slow, and Russia's in no rush. Russia is using that time to demilitarize NATO and demilitarize the US. That's what Russia's doing, is demilitarizing them. It's saying, look, as long as we're in Ukraine, you're going to keep throwing stuff in here. You're going to throw tanks and planes and machine guns and missiles, aren't you? Yeah, and we're going to keep blowing them up. So you just keep throwing them, and sooner or later you'll run out. And one of the reasons the U.S. is in such a weak position in Iran, why is that? It's because Russia's been demilitarizing all of NATO in Ukraine for the last 4 years, blowing our stuff up, and we keep pouring more in it. They keep destroying it. So the U.S. is much weaker because of Ukraine. Now the U.S. says to Iran, the problem is this too. It's one thing to be cocky. It's another thing to read your own headlines. It's one thing to say, we're tough. Look at us. Ha, ha, ha. We're strong. We could defeat anybody. Okay, fair enough. And a guy over there says, I don't want no trouble. But, man, if you touch me, we're going to dance, brother. We're going to dance if you touch me. And I'm ready to fight. I don't want to fight, but I'm ready. Here's the problem. You've been reading your own headlines. You're not as tough as you thought you were. You're getting old. You're getting fat. You're getting slow. And other people growing up, and they're getting strong, and they're getting fast, and they're getting tough. And they're young, and they're ready to rock and roll if they have to. And you're running off at the mouth, and you pick a fight with them. Within days, I looked at it, and I'm like, this war's lost. This war is lost. Why? Part of it is this. Look, the U.S. has as the U.S. as an empire expands. Because empires expand. The U.S. has 900 bases of occupation in various countries. We expand into a country and we put bases in that country. Those are not bases of defense. They're not bases of anything but occupation. We have to conquer that country and we occupy it with our bases, as these Gulf countries are finding out. That's all those bases are there for. They're not to defend you. They're not to help you. They are to occupy and dominate you. That's what they're for, and to launch wars against whoever we feel it's necessary to launch wars and fight wars with. They're not there for your benefit. Gulf countries, you're learning that, aren't you? Okay. And as the U.S. empire, as all empires, they do one thing: they expand. If you contract, you ain't an empire. If you contract, you're going in the opposite direction. Empires always have to expand. The U.S. has to go take more countries. So the U.S. said, we want Ukraine, and Russia said no. And U.S. said, yes, we're taking it. And Russia said no. And U.S. said, we're taking it anyway. And Russia said, okay, well, we'll fight over this. And the U.S. is losing that and ain't going to get Ukraine. Now, what else did the U.S. say? We're going to overthrow the government of Iran, and we're going to take Iran, because that's very important. Because, then we can control the Straits of Hormuz. We control all of its oil. We control all of this stuff. And we can use that to hurt China. So we're taking Iran. And Iran said, oh, no, you're not. Yes, we are. There's nothing you can do about it. Or I said, no, we're not. And they're like, didn't you watch Stephen Miller say that Venezuela is doing what we tell them to do because we have an armada off their coast, that we live in a world where, the strong do what they must and the weak, the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. We live in the world where might makes right, and we got might and you don't, and we're right, and we're taking what you got. And Iran said, well, okay, there's only one way to do this. So the U.S. said, okay, watch this. Oh, yeah, watch this, brother. We're going to clean your clocks. We're going to do this. So the U.S. started punching. Iran said, okay, we are going to hit everything you got in that region. B, you're an organ grinder. Organ grinders have monkeys. Your monkey is Israel. We're going to beat the hell out of your monkey. We're going to punish your monkey, Mr. Organ Grinder, bad. We're going to destroy, obliterate your monkey. And how can you be an organ grinder if you don't have a monkey? So they started beating, mercilessly pounding Israel, saying, if we kill your monkey, you're going to be something, but you won't be an organ grinder anymore. So what you think you are, we're going to kill your monkey and you won't be an organ grinder. In other words, you have Israel at the leading edge of your empire is Israel, and we're going to destroy Israel. And then you ain't going to, how you got an empire without a leading edge in this part of the world where all the oil is. So let's do this. And Iran, being a Shia, they're like, and we're not scared. Well, what if we nuke you? We're not scared, because if you do, then we'll end everything you have. You play your nuclear option, we'll play ours. You nuke us, then all of the oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, all of it in the Gulf, everywhere will be wiped out. The good news is we'll open the Straits of Hormuz. The bad news is there ain't going to be no oil to come through it. And you won't be able to rebuild that stuff for a decade. Oh, by the way, if you won't be able to rebuild it, because if you try to rebuild it, we're still going to be firing missiles at you. And oh, by the way, everything else that you have, everything that we can. And Israel, oh yeah, by the way, Israel has a nuclear power plant. We'll put dozens of hypersonic missiles on that. We will smash it and turn Israel into Chernobyl. Is that what you want? You'll have a nuclear meltdown in Israel. Chernobyl. Israel will be, you will not be able to occupy it. Human life will no longer be able to stay in Israel. So you nuke us, we nuke Israel. And oh, by the way, we nuke your economy. So what they're doing is they're saying we have a significant amount of leverage. The leverage is our geographical position. We can close down the most important oil checkpoint in the world and hurt you and all your allies. Number one. Number two, if you think you're going to kill us with nuclear weapons, you can't. If you shoot a nuclear weapon at us, we will fire the equivalent of nuclear weapons, because we will wipe out your economy. That's it. You're going to go, what are you going to go and tell your people? Well, we're not going to, your bad news, you're not going to be able to afford oil anymore, but it won't matter anyway, because industry around the world is shutting down, and there'll be nothing for you to drive. There'll be nothing, no parts for your car. Oh, by the way, the acid that comes out, sulfuric acid, we won't be able to make that. So you won't get tires. They're all of the things that you're used to getting. You won't get any of it. We will be back in the Stone Age. That's what we're going to be. There's going to be food shortages. Oh, just life is going to be hell. We're going back to the Stone Ages. So you nuke Iran, you and your whole people go back to the Stone Ages. The issue of you being an empire will no longer be at issue. So you might as well nuke yourself. So they have what they have is A, they have tremendous ballistic missile capability, but B, they have tremendous geographical leverage. So the U.S. said, we're hitting you. So the U.S. attacked. And Iran demonstrated with their offensive capability that they could hit the U.S. and U.S. interests enough that the U.S. Couldn't really stop them. The other thing I think that was very important, that they could hit U.S. interests enough to end the U.S. empire. So either way you look at it, if the U.S. takes certain actions against them, they have the capability to end the U.S. empire, and they will do it. Now, there's something else that's interesting in this conflict, and that is apparently Trump said something about, eliminating something from the Iranian leadership, and the Iranians said, you better be careful you don't get eliminated. What Iran is saying is this, it's something very interesting. They're sending a message to Trump. And that is, look, all this business about you going around droning people with your little drone programs, you too can play at that game. And they have been playing at that game. And we don't know who's been, quote, eliminated, but we do know that high-ranking Department of Defense officials and high-ranking military officials and other officials have been targeted and likely assassinated. We do know that the U.S. is saying is trying to at this point get like all of its ambassadors and high-ranking people in the State Department out of the region for fear, I believe, that they can be targeted because Iran has been so successful in targeting high-ranking people. I don't know. I haven't heard today about, there was thoughts that some leadership of the Iranian government has been eliminated. I did today when I got back, I was traveling. I saw some really alarming, unnerving, and I mean, quite frankly, unthinkably tragic news that Benjamin Netanyahu and Itamar Ben-Gvir may have survived. So let's pray. I'm not really a praying man, but let's pray that that news is incorrect. But we shall see. If I were a praying man, I would be down on my knees all day, but all night praying that, the news that they have in fact survived, any attacks that, that hopefully that would be pretty tragic for the world if it were true. So let's just see if that's, if we would all be blessed and grateful that wonderful things have happened, but we shall see. I don't know. I've heard that Netanyahu's out and about, that he might have said something, but I don't know because there is AI. And let's be quite right. Let's see. I don't know. Somebody says reported to RIA Nevada by the Iranian ambassador. Something was reported. I wonder what was reported. I don't know. Something was reported. But at any rate, whatever the case, I've also heard that Bibi Netanyahu's brother might not have made it. So I don't know. Have no clue right now. We don't know. If in fact some of the leadership of Iran has in fact been eliminated, that would be very interesting because that in itself is a loss. At that point, that would mean the war that the war is lost. But there are so many indicators. One of the indicators is this, and this is why I say there is no off ramp. In order for Iran to accept the end of this war to some extent, the US is going to have to do some things that empires don't do. One of the things is this: they're going to have to accept that they can't expand. And look, as an empire, the US it simply looks at the world like this. There's only two kind of countries that we have conquered and controlled, and countries that we intend to conquer and control. You're in one of those two. In order to really end this thing, the US has to say, we're not doing that anymore. From now on, Iran is no longer in the we intend to conquer and control them category. I think Iran's also going to demand, they're going to say, you got to get rid of all of the sanctions. Well, the US can't do that because that would mean we're not trying to conquer and control you anymore. So what happens if the US says, we need the Straits of Hormuz open, and Iran says, okay, first of all, you got to eliminate all sanctions. Then the US says, well, we can't eliminate all sanctions. And then Iran says, well, we can't open the Straits of Hormuz. And I think that's what Iran should do. I'm not happy about it. I'm not thrilled with it. No, let me put this differently. I'm not going to say I think that's what Iran should do from the perspective of my opinion is Iran should or shouldn't do that. I'm going to say it from the perspective of diplomacy. If I am dealing with an adversary that is not trustworthy, right? I can only make what's called my dad used to call a money in hand deal, right? It's when you shake hands with somebody, okay, we're going to do this and this, and you start with, I'm going to be needing the money up front, right? I've made a deal. You're going to give me $100 and I'm going to do this, but I don't trust you. So I'm always going to say, we shook hands. All right, it's a deal. I will be needing the money up front because I don't trust you to give it to me afterwards. Well, yeah, but you have to do the job and I'll do that. Nope. It's not the way it works. I don't have that kind of trust in you. We can do business. You want me to, whatever, fix your air conditioner. I don't know, whatever, right? Garland, I want you to fix the air conditioner. Look, I don't really trust you, but I really need it fixed. Okay, I can fix it. It's going to be a minimum of $500. Great, get to it. Going to be needing that $500 up front. Simple as that. If I don't have trust and you want me to fix your air conditioner, I'm going to be needing that money up front. If I don't get the money up front, then I ain't doing it. No hard feelings. And I think what Iran has to say is, and I think what Iran will say is, I think we're going to be needing the money up front. Here's what you got to do. But we can't do that. I know you can't do that. But that's what you got to do. But you can't do it. You need an off ramp. An off ramp requires you to bite the bullet. I'll put it like this. We need an off ramp that allows us to still have you on the agenda for tomorrow's meal. We need that allows us to still be in a situation where we only see two kind of countries that we've conquered and controlled, and countries that we intend to conquer and control. And since we haven't conquered and controlled you, we need an off ramp that allows us to still be in the market for taking you over and stealing everything you got. And Iran's got to say no. Now, here's the problem. That kind of imperial foreign policy must be enforced. It can't be negotiated. If I want your money and you don't want to give me your money, I must enforce that claim I have on your money. You say, I got $100. I want that money. I'm not giving it to you. That's my money. I claim that money. Yeah, but it's in my wallet. You can't have it. How you going to get it? I'm going to take it from you. Let's do this. Then I got to be able to take it from you. But what happens if you can inflict more pain on me than I can inflict on you? What happens if trying to get that money, I'll destroy myself. I'll kill myself. What happens if I come to you and I say, now I got you, and you say, yep, see this? It's a grenade. My finger's on the pin. Take this money. The pin comes. There's nothing you can do to stop that. So the only way that you can reach for that money is to die in this grenade pit. And I know you don't want to do that. And that's the decision you have to make. What you're going to do. Meanwhile, and you cannot underestimate this, the empire is internally is CTD, as they say, circling the drain. Internally right now, the U.S.'s ability to lie to the people about his law, about its foreign policy has evaporated. So much so that they don't have the capability to lie us into another war. As soon as they start talking about, we've got to, a couple of things. We've got to protect Iran from China. Number one, the American people are going to say, oh, or is that about another war? Number one. Number two, I wonder how Taiwan's going to feel about this. I wonder how the countries in the region who have bases, I wonder how Korea's going to feel about this. As soon as Americans said, we got a war. Hey, Korea, yeah, give us everything you got. We're not here to protect you. You can die. We don't care. We got to protect Israel. The U.S. is sluggish on resources, low on resources, so they just got to go take everything they have from everybody. So now the U.S. doesn't have any outlet. Look, I mean, if you're Taiwan, are you really thinking if China attacks, the United States will step in and defend us? The United States will get smashed in hours. You just watch the United States go against Iran and get smashed in days, get their clocks cleaned, their bases blasted, running for their lives, lying to their people, just complete madness. Within a week, the United States is begging for mercy, tapping out. Get me out of here. Ouch, ouch, ouch. If you're Iran, so let me ask you this. Just out of curiosity. If the U.S. can't stand up to Iran's missiles, which it can't, how do you think the U.S. would fare against Russia or China? How do you think the U.S. would fare? The U.S. has no air defense already. Our air defense is worthless. It's not good to be charitable. That when we have air defense systems, Patriot, THAAD, etc., David Sling, whatever. So we got these air defense systems and they are set up. And Iran is whistling missiles through them like a hot knife through butter. Bam, 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 bam. Drones and missiles. So let's start here. Our air defense systems don't work. Number one. Number two, we are running out of air defense systems that don't work. It's bad enough that you don't have them. You have a shield that doesn't work and you're running out of shields. Let's start there. How's that going to work against Russian hypersonic missiles, Oreshniks, things like that? That even when they worked, even when and the Russian, it's kind of Russian missiles that even when your air defense system worked at their best, they have no chance to stop these Russian missiles. How's it going to work? With ranges that make with the power and ranges that make Iranian missiles look like a child's fireworks. Make it look like somebody's taking bubble wrap, popping bubble wrap. That's Iran's missiles next to Russia's missiles. So what are you going to do? Your ships will be sunk in hours. If you went to fight Russia, your bases are blown up worldwide, pretty much all of the bases. How long? So Iran has obliterated your bases in a matter of days in everything in the region. Let me ask you this. If you were to go up against Russia, how long, which has Oreshnik missiles, which has hypersonic missiles that go, the Oreshnik missiles that go over their target and fire pod of 36 hypersonic missiles that hit the ground with these metal rods that are basically like as hot as the surface of the sun, that like turns everything around. They are darn near nuclear power without nuclear weapons. How are your bases going to survive Oreshnik's hitting them along with other missiles? How are they going to survive? They're not. So you say, Russia, we're going to war. How's the European backstop? Hey, European, what do you want to do? Here's the plan. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Ukraine with our troops, and the Americans will be our backstop, so that if Russia does anything, the Americans will come in and defeat Russia. Really? But they tried that with Iran, which is not even a pimple on Russia's butt when it comes to military power. And how'd that work out? Within days, every one of their bases in the region is smashed. Within hours, Russia would annihilate every base, every port, and every airfield NATO has within hours. I mean, it may sound like I'm, over talking things. Iran did it in days. And they don't have the power of Russia. They do not have the air defense of Russia, and they do not have the power of Russia. Within days, within hours. All Russia would do if the United States said we're going to war with Russia is every NATO base would be leveled, and without using nukes, would be leveled in hours. Let's start there. With the Oreshnik missiles and things of that nature, they're done. That's over. Your ships are sunk. We have no defense for these hypersonic Russian missiles, which again, they make Iran's missiles look like children's toys. And China has millions of missiles. So what would happen if you go to war with China? Okay, let's see. Every base in the Pacific region within hours would be turned to mush. There would be thousands of missiles hitting every base per hour, 24 hours a day. So my point being this, the U.S. is talking a lot of trash, but when it comes to its military capabilities, in respect to other world powers, they're quickly becoming non-existent. What are we going to do? Yes, we can throw some tomahawks at you, but we can't stand up to these. All these bases. We've got bases surrounding Russia and China. They're liabilities. They're liabilities. That's all they are. And they would be turned to dust in no time flat. My point being, U.S. ain't fooling nobody. Nobody. And allied countries that have bases, they know. If I got a U.S. base, all that is something that's going to get blown up in the first couple hours of a war. Everybody has to be thinking of that internally. The Europeans maybe aren't. European leadership probably isn't wise enough to take that into account, but a lot of the world is. So now what's happened? I got a couple of things. Oh my God, what happened to all of my notes? I had some notes of a couple of things that I want to make sure that I didn't hit on. I think one of the things that needs to be addressed in order to end this conflict, there's a couple of things that the U.S. can't even address, but here's one of the things I think should happen. And part of this is the United States. How do you ensure that the U.S., the neocons, are not able to come back in a year and say, we want to attack you again, because they always want to attack again. They'll never give up, right? I think one of the things that Russia should do, that excuse me, Iran should do, is say, first of all, China's coming in and rebuilding. Russia and China coming in, they're rebuilding. They're putting in nuclear power plants, all kinds of stuff. I think Iran has to say you're dropping all the sanctions, and then of course the U.S. says we won't, and then of course Iran says, well, we ain't opening the Straits of Hormuz, so that's fine. I guess if you're never opening, dropping the sanctions, we're never opening the Straits of Hormuz, and that's just the way the world's going to be. So let's all get accustomed to living with the Straits of Hormuz closed. That's what I'd say if I was Iran. We must all understand and we must all get accustomed to living like that, because you ain't dropping sanctions, we ain't doing that. You drop sanctions, we do that. But you said you could never drop them, we're never opening it. I'd play that hand if I was Iran. I think. I also would say this, oh, you want a resolution? So here's what we're doing. Russia and China are building massive Navy bases where the Straits of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab Strait in Yemen. They're building massive Navy bases and massive air bases. That's what I would say. Russia and China building that massive air bases in the region, in Iran, in several parts of Iran, a major Iran. Now, the Russians could also put in certain missiles, be they nuclear. I don't know. They could bring Iran under their nuclear umbrella. I don't know. They could put in Oreshnik missiles, things of that nature. I don't know, but Russia has the capability. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if they want to do it, but that's just a thought. I'm not saying that Russia should do it. I'm saying that's a thought, but I do think that Russia and China need to have bases, and they should just say, well, okay, this is what we're doing. Number one, we're not negotiating with you anymore. Don't come to us. I think that Iran has to say, you're an untrustworthy ally. Do not return to us ever to negotiate about anything. That's over. Number one, you're dropping all sanctions. Number two, there's nothing for us to negotiate with you about. If you want to talk to us, talk to somebody else. But you have to, agree, which we know they're lying, but you have to do this. You have to agree that you'll never make any attempt to negotiate with us again. Number three, Russia and China are building massive bases. So the U.S. then has to say, so then Russia and China has the capacity and the capability to defend the Straits of Hormuz. Now, here's the thing about it. I think Iran might not want to do that, and I can understand why, because they might want to say that's our leverage, and we're not giving up our leverage. Because if Russia and China build bases there, then we may say close it, and Russia and China may say we don't want to close it. So that's that. We don't ever want to give up that leverage. I think now my understanding is Iran did say something to the effect of, in order to end this, Israel has to get out of Lebanon and Gaza and give up all the stuff that they can never give up. So the bottom line is this: if Iran asks for the things that they have, if they demand the things that they have a right to demand, the U.S. and Israel can't say yes. And China has to play the hand and say, look, I know you can't say yes. And that's okay with me, because I'm not opening the Straits of Hormuz. You're the one that wants it open, not me. You're the one that wants it open, not me. And it's this: you lost the war. You're not an empire anymore. Vae victis, or is it vae victis, right? And that is, woe be to the vanquished. When you lose a war, you don't get a say. When you lose a war, you got to accept a butt whooping. When you lose a war, the outcome is imposed upon you by the victors. See, that's the problem with losing war. When we lost in Vietnam, the Vietnamese said, you will get the hell out and you will never come back. We lost to Afghanistan. What the Taliban said, you will get out and you won't come back. And we got out. We've said something about coming back. When we ain't come back, we lost that. Woe to the vanquished. Those are wars we lost. Now Iran is saying you've lost this war, and there's no way. Look, think about this. Every time you turn around, what does Russia hear from the Europeans? Well, we want a ceasefire, and Russia's like, yeah, and you're going to have to accept this, and Russia's like, yeah, but we're winning the war. But you're going to have to accept all of these things. So what you're saying is we're winning the war and we have to act like we like it. Yeah, let's see who's going, as I've said before, and who's going to make us. Who's going to force that upon us? That will have to be imposed upon us. And you're already trying to impose your will upon us in Ukraine. We have a fundamental incongruity of logic here. You are trying to tell us what to do when we're already fighting because you tried to tell us what to do and you lost the fight over trying to tell us what to do. And now you're trying to tell us what to do as though you didn't lose the fight. I think Russia right now may and should squeeze the door shut. Just squeeze Europe. I think Russia may, and I pray that Russia says to Europe what they said they may say, which is, look, you passed a rule with the EU, and the rule says at the end of this year, you will buy no more oil or gas from us, right? This is what Russia said, and Russia says, and I think we should do it now. Why wait? It looks like you're in deep and serious trouble because you're losing all your oil from the Middle East and you're losing all your gas from the Middle East and you don't have enough to last very long and you're in deep trouble, right? Yeah. But you told us you didn't want our gas and oil, didn't you? You passed a rule and said at the end of this year, you're going to wean yourself off of it, right? Well, you've made it clear you don't want it. And by the way, you're in deep and serious trouble and you can't really afford to give up our gas and oil, but you've already passed a law that says you have to give up our gas and oil at the end of the year, right? Yeah, we're going to do you a favor. We're going to end your gas and oil. What are you going to do? Sue us? What are you going to do? Sue us in court? Hey, we've got a contract with you for gas and oil to the end of the year. What happens then? Well, we've decided that we don't want yours, so we're cutting it off. You said you're not renewing a contract. You don't want it. Yeah. Well, sue us because you ain't getting any. And you know what? File it in court. And we'll fight it. We'll fight it to be in court for years. But right now, you won't have any gas. And what are you going to win? What are you going to win if you win 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? Oh, well, the Russians should have gave you gas. Oh, well, the Russians should give you money. We ain't doing it. The Russians right now have a leverage. They got a pressure point on Europe. And they need to just squeeze for all they got. You got them right now. You got that little finger in a fight, right? I always say in a fight, if you get that little finger right there, this little piggy right here, snap. It's a small piggy. Look at that. You got 4 big piggies and a little teeny one. That's why you want to get that little teeny. Ow! You want to just no mercy, snap that piggy. First thing, but as soon as you get your mitts on that thing, you're going to smack and you're going to snap it, right? That's what Russia needs to do right now. Europeans have been unreasonable. Americans are brainwashed about the Ukraine conflict. They have no idea, just like the Americans have no idea about what's going on with the U.S. empire with China. Why U.S. is doing this? We're going to do this because we're going to stop Iran from getting nukes, and we've got to save the protesters, and we've got to bring them democracy. And all lies. They're doing it to control the oil. And a big part of it is because they want to choke China off from being able to get Persian Gulf oil. The irony is that the United States is mad at Israel for choking off the Persian Gulf, when the reason that they want to control the Persian Gulf is so they can choke it off and stop their adversaries from getting oil. Isn't that interesting? And might I add allies, because they don't have just adversaries and allies, because they don't really have adversaries. There's no honor amongst thieves. And so now they're in a situation with Iran, with Ukraine and Iran, both of them, 2 wars that have clearly been lost. And what are they going to say to the American people? American people, we've lost these wars. No, they've got to say we win everything. We win. We're tired of winning. But Iran has leverage. Iran has the cards, and Iran is playing its cards well. You know, one of the things that has been said about the Russian leadership is this: they understand the limits of their power, and they play the power that they have well. You are bigger than me. You're stronger than me. You're faster than me. You can easily defeat me if I fight you. Easily, if we just grab each other, you're going to defeat me. I got leverage. As soon as I get my hand around that little teeny finger, I got some leverage, don't I? And I'm going to utilize that leverage because I'm going to break that finger and you are going to be in unthinkable pain. And when you look at that finger and three fingers are pointing in the east and one of them pointing in the west, you're going to probably go into shock. You see what I'm saying? It ain't big leverage, but it's powerful leverage. It's not like I got your arm that I'm breaking, which I may get that and I can twist it, or your wrist, or I may be able to hyperextend some joint or poke in eyes or do something, find a weak spot to hit you. But if I get that finger, it's a small area. What Iran has is geographical leverage. They control the Hormuz Strait. And they have to demand things from the U.S. empire that an empire can never give up. And then here's the other part of it. They're going to say, you have to do this. And the U.S. leadership is going to say, we can't. And the people are going to be hurt. We're the little finger, by the way. And American people are going to say, go ahead and do it. Oh, for God's heaven, look at the price of gas. Man, I don't know where gas is going to be in another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Apparently, the Trump team are calling Vladimir Putin. They're calling everybody, the Pope, Putin, you name it, everybody they can. Help. You got to get us out of here. There ain't no way to get out. It reminds me, you know, how many times, if you listen to me, what do I say? The Last Starfighter. Very interesting movie. And there was an instance where this, was it The Last Starfighter or was it Galaxy Quest? One of them, both very good, kind of weird B movies. But at any rate, at the end of the movie, there was the bad guy, and the bad, might have been Galaxy Quest, and the bad guy had this big kind of ship that looked like a planet, and it was a gigantic spaceship, and it had been severely damaged. And the helmsman looked at him and said, Captain, the helm's not responding. We have no power. We've lost all power. And we're in the planet's, we're in this planet's gravitational pull. In other words, our engines ain't running, and the gravity of this planet is pulling us into the planet. What do we do? And the guy looks at him. He's like, we die. You got idiots? You can't read the room? Look around. We got no power, which means we can't move the ship. We're caught in a gravitational pull, which means it's going to draw us in and we're going to burn up. We're going to die, you idiots. Why would you ask me such a stupid question? Right? So, what do? Well, we can't do anything. We've got to have the Strait of Hormuz opened, okay? Then you've got to drop Israel's got to back off, and they got to give the land back. And oh, by the way, you got to drop all sanctions. And oh, by the way, you got to pay us for the damage that have been done. And one of the things Iran says, you got to pay us for the damage that has been done since the beginning of the sanctions. In other words, what do we want? We want justice. But we can't give you justice. Yeah, we know. We know you can't. And we can't open the Straits of Hormuz either. Don't call us back. Don't call us asking for anything. Don't worry about it. We understand that you can't give us justice as long as you understand that we can't open the Straits of Hormuz. Well, then we'll nuke you. We still ain't going to open this. What good is that going to do you? That's going to be even worse, because then we're going to smoke every bit. We're going to basically blast Israel's nuclear power plant, and we're going to smoke every bit of oil infrastructure. You won't need the Straits of Hormuz open because there ain't going to be no oil to come through it. Is that what you want? So, any way you look at it, you don't get it. And then what happens to your economy? It's wiped out, and you're not an empire anymore. Oh, by the way, your people in your own country are going to cut your head off, and you're going to have nothing. What are you going to dominate the world? No, you won't. First of all, you won't have the oil to run your military machines. We're going to have oil to run your military machines. We're going to have parts for your military machine. You won't have them. And you will have collapsed the global economy. What do you think the rest of the globe is going to do to you? You think anybody's going to help you rebuild America? You're going to have starvation. It's going to look like 28 days later. Is that what you want to do? Pull the trigger. That's where we are. That's where the empire is right now. There's no off-ramp. They can't take the deal. We can't take the deal that Iran's putting out. We can't not take the deal that Iran's putting out. If we take the deal, the empire's over. If we don't take the deal, the empire's over. My point is the empire's over. If we take the deal, then the empire is no longer dominating people, and we've been whipped, and we have said to everybody we got our ass kicked in a week. A week. We didn't last 2 weeks. They didn't make the 12-day war. Israel at least took 12 days before Iran backed off, but they didn't have to. What Iran is saying is, okay, you want another 12-day war, but how'd that work out for us the last time? Last time we backed off in 12 days, you stuck a knife in our back. Not this time. We ain't backing off. This time, you're going to have to walk away with your tail between your legs, begging for mercy. So, apparently, there ain't no off ramps, and the same in Ukraine. Now, Trump is calling Vladimir Putin, saying, "Can I get a deal with Iran?" He ain't even talking about Ukraine. They know who today ain't happened with Ukraine. They know there's nowhere to go with Ukraine. They know that's beat. That's done. That's finished. That war is lost. But they're just trying to say, is there any way out? Vladimir Putin said, well, they've got a new Ayatollah. I think you can kiss his butt and give him in the city square in the middle of Tehran and give him 3 hours to draw a crowd and then just kiss his butt. That may help. Can't guarantee it. But we give that a shot. That's about it. But you've made your words through lies and perfidy. You know what perfidy is? Perfidy. Perfidy. Let me give you an example. It is a crime under international law. If we had a war and I was to put up a white flag and say, hey, I want to talk to you because we're both protected under this white flag. That means we'll do diplomacy and I won't shoot, you won't shoot. You say, okay, and you come out of your foxhole and I shoot you. If I use the cover of international law, the cover of safety, right, as a way to attack you and kill you and do something terrible to you. For instance, when Donald Trump and crew said to the Iranians, "You're safe because we are you were engaged in diplomatic actions and under international law, when we're engaged in diplomacy, you're safe and we won't attack you." And as soon as Iran said, "Okay," they attacked them. That would be considered perfidy. That's why the British Empire for years, centuries, was referred to as perfidious Albion. Right? The lies and treachery is all you do. That's the U.S. empire, but it's too late now because you don't have the ability to enforce empire anymore. You can't enforce it on Russia and Ukraine because that war is lost. You can't enforce it on Iran because that war is lost. And to show you how broken the empire is, you've got Democrats now saying, yes, what's her name? Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, Miss I'm different, I'm love, I'm peace. What does she say? Well, we won't help Iran, but we're helping Iran, but we won't help Ukraine. We're helping Israel, but we won't help Ukraine. In other words, look, the only difference between the Democrats and the Republican is they got different war priorities. They both have war priorities. Marianne Williamson isn't saying, oh, we'll spend all that money on this war, but we're not giving people health care, or we're not helping the sick or the people that are out of work or dealing with all of the trouble that our neoliberal our neoliberal policies are raining down on people, making their life miserable. No, Marianne Williamson doesn't say that. She said, hey, wrong war. That's all Democrats have. Wrong war, but that's our war. Your war is not the good war. Our war is the good war. And they're both lost. It's pathetic. It's sad. I think that we're in a position where the U.S., I don't see how much longer the U.S. can continue to take the military, economic, and the subsequent political punishment that this war is putting out, is creating, is generating. I guess that's the best word. And Donald Trump, I think, is trying to get out because he knows, not first of all, he's got this, the 1-year presidency. Donald Trump had a 1-year presidency. 1 year. After that, he's finished. There's no hope for the midterms. There's no hope for anything for Donald Trump. 1-year presidency, because what Donald Trump has done is he has generated an environment where his own people, for the most part, don't trust him. There's these fake polls. Yes, 98% of Trump supporters still trust him. That is look. If you believe those, if you believe Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, then you deserve what you get at this point. If you believe them, those polls are garbage. Trump's political base is falling apart. They hate his guts. A lot of them. He lied, and let's face it. Let's talk about this real quick before we go. What happened to the Democrats in 2024? They kind of collapsed. Did they not lose both houses in the presidency? And what was it about again? Oh, yeah, their support for Gaza. The Democratic Party was obliterated because of their support for Gaza. I mean, their lack of support for Gaza. My bad. Their lack of support for Gaza. Their support for Israel. Now, gee, what is it that's taking Trump apart? It's the turn for the Republicans, which means that both parties now are toxic, and it's because of their support for Zionism and war. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, you all. I want to thank all of my Patreon people. I want to thank all of my PayPal people and Buy Me a Coffee. Thanks a lot, everybody who really helps keep this channel going and who has donated money to help Scott Ritter and I to be able to raise enough money to go to Russia here on the 20th, hopefully, of this month for 10 days and do a lot of work that is desperately needed to do to work towards peace. We will see. I don't know, to be quite frank, if these, the tragic news out of the Middle East that Ben-Gvir and or Netanyahu have survived, that would truly be a terrible tragedy for human kind. But let's just hope and pray that that's not true. I still don't know. And thanks, everybody. Don't forget, for those who want to email me, my snail mail is there, P.O. Box. You feel free to snail mail me. I've got some great letters from people. And again, some people have sent donations. I appreciate that. But we've also got letters and manifestos and all kinds of cool stuff. So thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.